new episode, and this is very, very important episode. We have a debate, and this kind of debate is very helpful for developing world. Today's topic is this house belief in the rise of augmented reality in Hollywood and its result. It's definitely a fun debate. We have our honorable speakers. We have our honorable speaker from the government side. We have our honorable prime minister of this parliament, Professor David Smith, and we have our minister for today's parliament, Mr. Marshall. We have our opposition leader, very powerful opposition leaders, and actually it's a very healthy debate competition in between Professor David Smith and Professor Rob. We have opposition leader Professor Rob and deputy leader of the parliament, Professor Ching, and we have our very, very famous and very helpful professor, Professor Saridan Tachino. He will be our debate analyst. I just want to share some good news. Next month with Central Bank of Bangladesh, we have climate change related dialogue, and we help Central Bank Bangladesh to develop the policy. Today we have another good news because VR is very, very important for training and development. Actually, the energy ministry from Bangladesh, they regularly join. Even yesterday's session, they join as an audience. I'm sure today they will join as an audience. And they have 55,000 employees under energy ministries. And they want to collaborate with World Talent Economy Forum. They want to join this kind of open dialogue, policy development, and they want to train their employee for industry 4.0, and definitely VR and AR is very, very important for them. So all of your dialogue and debating actually contribute a lot for this developing world. Now different ministry they are joining, and hopefully with this kind of debate we can create real awareness. First, now I just want to give chance our honorable prime minister of parliament, Professor David Smith.
Well, Sharif, thank you so much. The Parliament is very happy to support that augmented reality is a really very important part of what we see going forward and how we're going to use it with our government, and particularly if you see it from around the world, that the rise of augmented reality in Hollywood actually sets the stage well for us, particularly as a developing nation, and how we can begin to use it to help across the citizens that we have. Augmented reality really layers additional content onto the real world in front of you, and it provides digital content that supplements what's before your eyes. And you see it through many different devices and things today. And AR technology has massive commercial potential in a wide range of industries, and we see it. So in AR applications in the entertainment industry includes both cinema and gaming. One of them that we experienced well here in our country was Pokemon Go. And it's really an example of AR app that went viral with millions of people around the world, and hundreds of thousands of our own citizens engaged in the magical world that was populated with cartoon characters. And using that as an example, it even shows how a little bit of blending between the physical world and the digital world can have a huge impact. And you begin to look not just at the imaging, but the fact that this type of augmented reality can use GPS to help put us in different places. And it lets us give richer context to the content that we're looking at. And that really is a magical combination that we can use with our citizens. Augmented reality in cinema really allows us traveling back in time too. And we see now some series being put together where you're walking through the ruins of Rome. You're in the Colosseum. And that is a natural type of interface that you're seeing in our whole entertainment area. And, it really takes the saying that you have in entertainment that will fix it in production, and it takes it to the next level, because we have used green screens as a safety net for our cinematic production for years. Uh, and you see a lot, even on television, with what they call chroma keying. But you really take it and it begins to go beyond it. You know, you look at things like the Hobbit. It was used extensively there. We see it used in many programs. One of my favorites is if we go back and look at Avatar. There's versions of Avatar where you can use it in an AR process and actually you can be part of it. And that augmented reality really brings you a lot of different things. You see the ability with some of the experimental uses of augmented reality where you put yourself into the program and you know how you become part of it and you see how it works. But with the use of streaming and the ability to take a streaming content, combine it with augmented reality, you become in ways part of the director. And this is a technology that I really believe we're going to see used much more. It has so many applications. We can take the augmented reality that we use in the entertainment industry and we can put it directly within to the environment here. Imagine, if you would, that myself and Rob as the opposition leader, we could stream our debates in the parliament here live and actually through the use of augmented reality, have each of the citizens who want to choose to participate not look at a two-dimensional screen like we are now, but really take part of it, take part of the hearings we have in the parliament and becoming more involved in it. Augmented reality is going to be more captivating in the entertainment industry. It's going to become more captivating what we do with government, as we are seeing it also apply in the commercial sector as well. So really, this House believes that augmented reality has a very strong place going forward in the entertainment industry, our own use of it within our country, and our own use across the commercial sectors and education going forward. And that's our initial position, is that it's there. We can take advantage of it as it has been for a long time in the entertainment industry. So that's our initial positioning. Rob, look forward to
Thank
hearing
you.
yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor David Smith, for your excellent contributions. And you are our Honorable Prime Minister for today's parliaments. We have our strong opponent in the parliaments. Last like few sessions, he go for the oppositions, and previously he was government side. We have our Honorable opposition leader of the parliament, Professor Rob Enderle.
Okay, the position of record is this House believes the rise of augmented reality in Hollywood and its results. First, we really need to define what augmented reality is. Augmented reality is when you overlay a virtual image over something that's physically real. The implementations of augmented reality with regard to entertainment have one serious shortcoming, and that's occlusion. Because right now, what happens is you get a ghostly figure that overlays reality. So it doesn't look real. Virtual reality on a different tack is something where you go in and everything's rendered. There is nothing real to it. The two things have come together in something we call mixed reality. Mixed reality is the supergroup underneath which you have AR and VR. But there are mixed reality instances, and that's where you take reality, capture it with cameras, you digitally merge it so you get occlusion, and the end result is at high resolution, indistinguishable from what might otherwise be real. Now, we don't have full immersion yet, but this is closer when you want to blend real and virtual together and create a seamless experience. Because, as I said, with AR, it's an overlay. So the mixing, the interaction between what's real and what's virtual is difficult because you're limited by what's real. And in virtual reality, you don't get anything that's real. So you're not grounded in you have no grounding in reality. And then in mixed reality, that's where you get to blending, but it requires a tremendous amount of computing power. But now we're talking about Hollywood, and Hollywood is about the observer. It's about the audience. you're not producing a piece of content to entertain the actors. You're producing a piece of content that's to entertain the audience. And the Honorable Prime Minister David Smith did rightly point out that we did have Pokemon Go as a successful entertainment product that used AR. But the problem with Pokemon Go as a Hollywood type of construct, it doesn't work real well for an observer. I mean, what you do is if you're watching the overall activity, it doesn't look like people are really going after living Pokemon. It lacks the depth and the engagement that the audience needs to see the resulting media product as being real. We've got to be careful that we don't merge a bunch of things. The AR is not CGI. There were some discussions that kind of blurred that computer generated images are often used in movies, but that's not AR. The AR it actually goes in and as it says, attempts to augment reality, take reality and make it different, not necessarily better. Where augmented reality works incredibly well is for things like remote support, where a remote observer can see what the technician is doing, and overlay what the technician sees with specific instructions or pointers that guide the technician to what it is they need to do. That works well, but how would that translate? I mean, other than a plot element, how would that translate in movies? It wouldn't. It wouldn't make the actor any better. Firstly, you'd have to digitally remove the augmented reality glasses because they'd look kind of bizarre wandering around the movie set with the glasses on, which would be a problem. And you'd use a CGI to certainly do that. But you kind of get the problem. Actors got the glasses on. Are they using it to read their lines? Well, that's not going to work because it's going to include whatever else they're seeing. Are you using it to make what's real around them or what's virtual around them more real? Well, you don't have occlusion, so that's not going to work very well. Where Hollywood is using digital imagery in the creation of content is with something that's called an LED wall. This is a wall made up of LEDs that places the physical set, in what looks like the movie instance. And so you can have things going around that the cameras are picking up and the actor can emote against those other items, but that's not augmented reality. That's an application of virtual reality because those scenes are not blending reality and the virtual world. Those scenes are fully virtual, and that's what's being used to enhance the underlying movie. So the augmented reality doesn't lend itself at all to a Hollywood type event. Virtual reality could, and certainly we've seen CGI used heavily in movies to change the overall environment. But to date, the only use of augmented reality, and it hasn't been widespread, is by directors who then use augmented reality glasses to see what the scene's going to look like using CGI. But mixed reality headsets are far better because you get occlusion. And so then you get the entire scene. Where augmented reality, you're going to be seeing the set pieces, the backstage, the other stuff with a fuzzy overlay of what the CGI elements are creating. And remember, often they're not creating them at full resolution real time. They're creating them at low resolution real time for upscaling later and inclusion in the movie. So the augmented reality glasses, as they're used occasionally now, will undoubtedly be replaced with mixed reality glasses where the entire scene can be better blended and the director can see the scene much closer to the way it will actually appear. So augmented reality glasses just don't lend themselves, at least not right now, for entertainment. They're great for industrial use. Microsoft used it with Lawrence Livermore Labs to explore Mars. I got to participate in that. And while you're working, it looks like you're actually standing on Mars and able to point to things. And they use images from the Mars rover and then render a 3D scene around the individual. But they still see their office. They still see the carpet. They still see. So as an entertainment element applied to an observable type of content and that context of a movie, it just doesn't work. So we absolutely disagree that the rise of augmented reality in Hollywood and its results is going to happen. It's a stopgap in some cases, but as soon as we get to full rendered mixed reality, it will just take over because it's a better blending and a better technology for something that's trying to recreate a movie experience as opposed to do training or used for scientific experiment, where augmented reality does work today.
Sharif is back.
Hello. Yes. I think our opposition leader just finished his speech. Now I
Yes.
request our Minister of ICT and Education, Mr. Marshall.
Well, thank you, Sharif. And the Honorable Prime Minister has pointed out the use of AR and its abilities in its ability to help our economies around the world. And from Hollywood's point of view, I think the Honorable Opposition is kind of taking the wrong tact on this. He's trying to apply the technology for making movies. But what about the movies that have been made? I'll give you just a list of movies that talk about and show AR. There is a very famous movie. If you want to see it, you're not going to see it now because it's been all around a while. But it's called They Live, in which a drifter discovers a pair of sunglasses that allow him to wake up to the fact that aliens have taken over the Earth. That's basically the premise of They Live. And if you haven't seen it, you could get yourself down to the video display online and see if you can download it. But little did they know that the creators behind the film would actually detail a life of AR that would be possible in the future. And I think what we're talking about here, I mean, in our country, we're not Hollywood, but why did this come before the parliament? Is because it's interesting that it rather works in reverse in the case of They Live. What in fact is going on in that movie is that everyone without the glasses can see the AR. And it actually takes wearing the shades to be able to see what is really going on behind the computer-generated facade. That's a premise of that particular movie. What other movies have used AR as a premise for their theme? Well, there's been Top Gun. You might have remembered that one. That's the one where talking about heads-up displays, which, by the way, are used in jet fighters today. If you put on the helmet and you bring down the goggles, the visor, then you have an AR heads-up display. So it is real. Another movie that used the theme of AR is Total Recall. If everybody remembers Arnold Schwarzenegger, in which he played the cop that was going out to Mars. Speaking of Mars, the Honorable Opposition. And by the way, I just heard today on BBC that Mars has a situation in which they have earthquakes there now. They've discovered earthquakes using AR technology. So no one is questioning that it's a superb idea and really interesting vision of the future. The question is it real now? Well, in the movies, it's real as a theme. Another movie is Terminator, another interesting movie in which the various Terminator movies, most notably Terminator 2 at the start, Arnold Schwarzenegger uses his built-in computing power to measure up people for their clothes, as well as later on in the film to assess whether the police force that he's just unleashed hell on are still alive. So that's another thing. A more up-to-date set of movies is Iron Man. If you've watched Iron Man, this has got to be one of the most advanced cases of AR in the heads-up display. Iron Man's suit is so kitted out with AR goodies that it gives stacks of real-time information so that Tony Stark can do what he does best. So that's the thought. That's the theme there. And of course, there's another movie called Minority Report. Rather than tell you which bits aren't using AR, it's probably easier to tell you which bits are. So Tom Cruise embraces augmented reality with aplomb in this sci-fi set in 2054. So it's even ahead of our time of 2022. So I think what we're seeing here today, and the discussion and the premise of our parliamentary discussion, is that AR in Hollywood, as our Prime Minister has pointed out, is here. It's here to stay. We can argue that the fine points with the opposition, whether AR will morph into something else, but AR is here and it's being used in the movies. It's the theme of many movies. I just enumerated a bunch of them. Another one is Avatar that was brought up. So I think that the question is, oh, by the way, let's not forget RoboCop. RoboCop was a great display of heads-up AR. So whether the theme is it really being used or it's not being used. It's a theme of science fiction movies in Hollywood, and Hollywood is a place where people like to promote stories and themes of what is possible and what may not be possible and what the threats are of these possibilities. So I think that, as our prime minister has pointed out, AR is here, it's coming, it's going to morph into other things. We know that. So the premise is that AR is something we should all embrace. And as the Minister of Education, our proposal is that all our school children go out and put on AR headsets and become AR avatars themselves. I'm kidding. I'm just kidding. I know that Rob is going to attack me on that one. But in any case, I just want to say that I myself, by the way, am an avatar, and I'm not really here. So I just want you to know that, Rob. So you can't really attack me. But for all due intents and purposes, around maybe 10 minutes to before the hour is over, this avatar is going to disappear, and then you'll say, "What happened to him?" And I'll say, "I'm really here anyway." So there you have it.
Thank you. Thank you, our honorable minister of this parliament. We only know that he has a lot of experience in business and in politics, but today we can understand that he actually has a lot of experience about Hollywood. So you will be happy actually next year we have projects with Bollywood. We are actually one of the kings actually sponsoring World Talent Economy Forum, and we have our technology conference, Nikola Tesla Technology Conference. So definitely your experience from Hollywood will be very, very helpful for these conferences because we are integrating with Bollywood. So that will be very, very interesting event for all of us. Uh, now I request Deputy Leader of the Parliament. Yes, I know that he has good engagement with Hollywood. He's actually expert of dance and entertainment. Professor Ting.
Yeah, so I'm in the opposition.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm basically against all the establishment views since I now have this chance being in the opposition.
It's actually satire, so you can take any positions and support your opposition
Okay,
leader.
okay, so I take this view because the establishment view do not include value judgment. So how do you make a value judgment? How do you make a decision? Okay, you make a decision. Each society has its own way of making decisions. And if you're in a money-oriented society, they only consider short-term monetary returns. If you are in a knowledge-oriented society, which I hope the government should be in, that would give you short-term, long-term, and monetary and socially advantageous non-monetary return. So all this need to be considered in the value judgment. So to say something about the consequences of having different government. Today we have a military war. We also have a trade war. Finally, knowledge. I prefer knowledge war. In a knowledge war, both sides wins. In a military war, both sides lose. Okay. In a trade war, one side wins, one side loses. Okay. So there is advantage in having a knowledge-oriented society. So now let's get to something very serious, and also it's a subject I'm quite interested in. That what is the ultimate goal of augmented reality, aside from making movies? And I have held this view for a long time, and also I'm very strong believer of this view. The goal of existence is self-creation, because what we self-create, we'll be able to do whatever we can do. So in the self-creation, there are there are two parts. We need to know how humans living system operates, and also we have to give a description of a human being. You know, we have people, who are very beautiful, and we have people who are not so beautiful. If you ask them, they will all prefer to look better. So this augmented reality will help, but we need to have ultimate purpose. See, the purpose is to to make things beautiful. Okay, that is in self creation. Therefore, there is a reason for working on augmented reality, but not just in movies. And the society doesn't make this right decisions. Therefore, they seem to have focused on movies and also on money and on entertainment. Actually, there is a much higher goal that we should try to achieve. You see. So basically, that's my my
Thank you.
objection.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Leader of the Parliament. And now I'm requesting Professor Rob for rebuttal. Professor Rob.
Well, as we started the underlying argument, I pointed out that in terms of a tool to create movies, augmented reality just isn't adequate. It's a tool that is great for conveying information. It's great for allowing a scientific group to look at someplace remote and at least feel a little bit like they're there. But its limitations are based on where technology was and is today. And the emphasis even in those areas is moving from augmented reality to mixed reality, because the advantage of mixed reality is a true blending. And with a true blending, you don't get the issues with regard to having ghosting over the physical elements and when you want to engage. Now, for some things, augmented reality will still be good. The heads-up displays, as Marshall pointed out, in aircraft, you don't really need mixed reality for that. You don't need to waste the CPU, the computing bandwidth, to do that. Because you're simply trying to point out targets and allow the pilot to see outside and in front. Though I can certainly imagine a future time if you wanted to get rid of the cockpit and harden the cockpit so you no longer had glass, then you would go to a mixed reality because you're only going to have cameras feeding the pilot. And in that case, mixed reality would make more sense. So and that's clearly in the future. But the Parliament argued not that it would be used in movies. I think they must have given me that point, and that it would be used in movies as a plot element. But plot elements go up and down, and the position that Parliament has is this House believes in the rise of augmented reality in Hollywood and its results. And in opening, I admitted right off that it's used in movies. I could have listed the same movies that Marshall listed in terms of its use. But look at the age of those movies. The vast majority of those movies were done over a decade ago. The current movies that are using this are largely military derivatives. They're talking about stories like he was pointing out with displays. And we've had heads-up displays in cars as well. There are undoubtedly going to be movies that showcase that. But the use of augmented reality as a movie element will rise and fall with augmented reality's use as a tool. And while there may be some sustaining uses of augmented reality for things like training or remote support, where it doesn't make sense to waste the computing power on either virtual reality or mixed reality, as we move to other elements of the world, much like the fax machine gave way to email, the AR is going to eventually give way in the majority of instances, at least instances where you're using it right now instead of a mixed reality because the technology isn't there. I mean, put it a different way. One of the ways augmented reality is used, for instance, is to place furniture that you haven't bought yet in your home. Without occlusion, what you see is the couch that you're thinking of buying as a ghost over the couch that you've already bought. It's not great. But if you go to a mixed reality instance, then you see your living room the way it will be with the couch. The old couch is gone. It's a much deeper, more rewarding experience. So as technology advances, augmented reality will give way to mixed reality. And as it goes away from the real world, or gets reduced in the real world, it will have to get reduced in Hollywood unless we just get fixated in a particular time where augmented reality is dominant. And since it's not really dominant any place now, it's hard to believe that's going to happen like, say, Westerns. We still, even a long time out since Westerns and single action handguns, we still have a lot of movies with Westerns and single-handed handguns because we're fixated on that period, even though nobody except in certain events uses single action handguns, certainly not in police or military. So in the end, the rise of augmented reality in movies, whether we're talking about it in terms of movie creation or in terms of movie content, would be tied to a rise of augmented reality in the world. But as I've mentioned, right now, mixed reality is coming in. Barjo is the leading provider of mixed reality glasses. Lenovo's got them coming. In fact, virtually all the PC-based VR glasses are now capable of mixed reality, even at the low end, because they're using the cameras to index stuff around the room so you don't run into it. So in the end, every single, with the exception of training and with some training and some remote technical support, the industry's moving away from AR into mixed reality, and as a result, those people using AR will decline against the other options. And that means it can't rise in Hollywood over time because the base material, the base trend, the trend of using it in the here and now is going into decline. And so if it's not being used for movie creation and it's not being used in an increasing form in the real world, then there's no foundation for the rise of AR in Hollywood. It misses the elements driving the rise. We never talked about the end results of what a wider use of AR would be in Hollywood, either as content and creation. And the only end result that I can see short term is to include more things that use heads-up displays and that kind of technology, which have come forward. But even if we look at heads-up displays in automobiles, they're going to go away in favor of autonomous driving. You don't need a heads-up display if the computer's driving your car. And even in terms of people buying heads-up displays in cars, it hasn't been a great attach rate. It's gone up a little bit, but I challenge you to point to a movie other than one of the Tom Cruise elements that we're using, the BMW, that had a heads-up display, that even show the heads-up display in automobiles that have it. So that in the end, there is no indication that augmented reality, not virtual reality, not mixed reality, that augmented reality is going to advance either in movie creation or in movie content. And the opposition rests.
Thank you, our Honorable Opposition Leader of the Parliament. Now I request for the closing remarks from our Honorable Prime Minister of this Parliament, Professor David Smith.
Thank you so much for this excellent debate that we've had on this topic. And as we've seen from both sides, there's numerous examples of augmented reality being used. But what the opposition has done is they've tended to focus on the use of augmented reality as though it relates to the HoloLenses and the other type of headsets you might wear. And even though he did mention the LCD screen, there's a lot of others there as well. One of the uses of augmented reality is just using sound as a virtual reality piece around with you, which can really help supplement because we do use our multiple senses. There's another use of augmented reality that is using smell, using others to begin to help segment us. And those can be used in what we're doing. You know, I love that our minister talked about some of the use in classic films. I particularly like the use that we see in Iron Man. And, you know, I'm ready to take the Marvel movies and put on the Iron Man outfit and become Tony Stark and be able to use those things as we use it in our country. But that is not really all what we're talking about here. And we're talking about ways to take the elements and use it. I recently went and sat in an IMAX theater at one of the museums and regenerated some of the IMAX films where, even though it is not true augmented reality, things with like flight, you begin to feel like you're part of it, that you're involved with it. And that is places where we can see this usage going forward with it. Yeah, I love the examples we see in some of the best universities where they're looking at what are the enhancements that we're going to have and how we're going to go through it. So, one of the false impressions we have is that it's AR experiences have to look like something now in Minority Report, that it has to go through these others, that it has to be high resolution, that we can use other ways to put it. But, I love the Bose example where they layer in all the other elements with it and look in the other user faces. But can we use particularly mixed reality as a tool for government? I think the answers are yes. Can we use mixed reality as a tool for our police, for our military? The answer is yes. Can we use augmented reality and mixed reality in our healthcare across our nation? The answer is yes. Can we use it in our education? Once again, the answer is yes. So can we take the augmented reality? Can we take the mixed reality? Can we take the extended reality and begin to use it in our nation to the benefit of our nations? The answer is yes. Can we take the lead from cinema, from the entertainment industry, the ideas that they've created? One of the things that is so critical for our nation is how do we spark innovation? And the use of AR in entertainment gives us the state of what is possible, helps us understand places we can take and expand it. And as Prime Minister of this Parliament, I really want to encourage our nation to do that. I want our nation to be able to be on the cutting edge of what is possible, to be on the cutting edge of using our imagination to turn in reality, to use our imagination to help us as a parliament more effectively govern the country and run it. And so, in our perspective, we do believe that augmented reality, as it is practiced in cinema, as we can begin to use it, has a place in our country going forward. So, Sharif, thank you for the opportunity to represent the government in this area.
Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister, for today's concluding remarks. We have our expert panelists, very famous personality from this augmented reality and virtual reality world, and I learned a lot about this industry from Professor Sharidan Tatsuno. And as our audience most come from developing world, they want to utilize it. Let's say I'm discussing about these energy ministries. They want to utilize this kind of technology. Yes, entertainment industry, they want to utilize it. Some of the famous production house like Kon Borega Korproti from India, from Bollywood, they also communicate with World Talent Economy Forum. So your guidelines about this debate and for our audience will be very, very helpful. Professor Sharidan Tatsuno.
Okay, very good. Hi, I'm Sheridan Tatsuno from San Francisco. I'm a serial entrepreneur. The last 3 startups I'm doing is virtual reality and augmented reality using AI. So we've already done it. So I know most people are familiar with the Hollywood uses because that's pervasive. But you have to look behind the scenes because VR, AR, mixed reality have been used by enterprise pretty extensively since 2016 or so. After Oculus Rift was acquired, there was a big boom. My company, we did one in Sweden. We used it for sustainable city planning, Copenhagen, Malmo, Stockholm. We built whole cities. It looked like Star Wars, high resolution using Unreal 4.0 and 5.0 is even better. We did whole stadiums, trains, and you could sit inside the trains. We did, we sold real estate. we did pretty much anything you can imagine in commercial, industrial, real estate. And so much of the discussion is good, because I think the value of Hollywood is really kind of to open our minds and to look at how we could use it, not just for games and fantasy worlds, but real use. Because I'll be frank, I'm an urban planner by training, and the Star Wars and the Avatar looks exactly like the real cities we were building in Lune 2070. I couldn't see any difference between the two. And most of our developers were gamers from Unity and then Unreal. So now I'd like to provide a little perspective so you understand what's going on. First of all, I know you had a debate here, but we're all stuck in or logic, this or that, this or that. Well, in the real world, we use everything, AR, VR, mixed reality, extended reality. And it's not the technology so much, it's the use case. What are you going to use? Why do you need it? And then use the simplest deployment of that mix of technology. So, for example, if you're just doing training, sometimes AR is good enough. Just rough, crude simulations. You don't need a high-res Avatar movie to do it. It's just overkill. So one of the dangers is overkill. Because Hollywood can show you everything, everybody thinks you have to look like Hollywood. You don't. A lot of that, it looks like Lego blocks. You just move around. The second is that virtual reality, augmented reality came out of the Pentagon first because they had the biggest budget. So they developed it decades ago, 20, 30 years, 40 years ago. And Hollywood picked it up. Now, if you know, there's a bias, at least in the United States, we like to create dystopias, either war. I've seen the military use of VR. It's pretty scary. I saw it 5 years ago. All the agencies showed us, and it looked worse than Avatar. So yeah, they do it now, and all the militaries use. And that's a given because they started. Now you go down the curve toward Hollywood, and of course Hollywood makes its money on sensational bad movies. Nobody goes to see a utopia. It's kind of boring, frankly. So Aristotelian logic of theater is conflict sells. Hollywood has embraced that. So the worse, the more, the sensational, the better. Otherwise, you put people to sleep. So there's a bias toward dystopias. Now, going to Professor Cheng's idea is that you can use all these technology for utopias. We do it all the time. I'm an urban planner. We go from dystopia, a messy city, toxic, dirty, and on, and we plan the future. We use VR right now. We've been doing it for actually our VR planner has used it from the 1990s with $1 million machines and 100,000 headsets in Sweden for sustainable development. So we've been using it for developing utopias, especially in Sweden, where everything must be sustainable, for 30 years. All right, so it's not imaginary. It's actually going on behind the scene. The other thing too, I think, is you need to look at China. China's actually ahead of us, and especially in AR. 5 years ago, a Chinese developer showed me his AR. They did the Monkey King. And I said, what happened? Well, the Agricultural Bank of China wanted to celebrate the Year of the Monkey, 2016. So what they did is they said, okay, for the smartphones, the children in every year New Year's get a red little envelope with money in it. But what they did instead is they had a little AR book, which is beautiful embossed book with monkey on it. And then you open and it had some story. And then there's a QR code at the back. And then when you put your smartphone on it, a little monkey jumped in your phone, is running around. It's really cute. They sold the book for $10. In the first several months, they sold 20 million. The bank made $200 million, and the developer said, "Yeah, I only got a couple $1,000 because it was easy to do." The bank was printing money, and then they released it in 2016. I think the bank made over $500 million on that little book. So here's the fallacy: you have to make money in AR, you don't. You make money on the paper. So think about it. You don't even need to have a book. You could just have a beer top or anything with a QR code, which triggers the movie. So you could sell any kitsch item, anything you want, or clothes even, with a QR code on it, and it can activate the VR world. You make the money on the tangible world, the sweater, the clothes, not the AR. The AR is just advertising and a subscription to the service. All right, so that's the next generation streaming service. China did that 5 years ago. And then Pokemon, which was started 2016, 2013 was sidelined. And then after they saw the Chinese make a fortune, they released Pokemon Go right that summer, 2016. So you had two things going on, but the media never covered China. They only covered Pokemon Go and what happened there, but they ignored the Chinese making over $500 million from AR books. Now the Chinese set up several AR book companies. They're venture funded. I'm surprised Disney and everybody hasn't done it to revitalize the publishing industry. So I think the next move is to merge the real world with the AR world or virtual world, where the virtual world is just free, just like the Chinese did. And you make your money on all the clothes with the QR codes or whatever to trigger it, and any item. And so I think in the future, all items will have some sort of QR code or some trigger to activate AR, VR, MR experiences, depending on whatever you want, right? So I think you need to look carefully at China, because in Silicon Valley, we know once the Chinese hit it, so if you follow the price curve down from Pentagon to NASA, early adopters, then big corporations to Hollywood first, and then it starts moving to medium-sized businesses, and then the consumer. Hollywood literally jumps you to the consumer to prepare them for the future. That's the value of Hollywood. So this is possible using existing VR, AR. All right, but the actual use cases take a while for consumer. And so the next generation, Hollywood, actually 5 years ago at the Technology Summit in Silicon Valley, all the big studios showed, they were showing us, besides Disney and Star Wars, the next generation AR theaters and home use. And they look a little like sports bars. They're playing around with sports bars where you could see the stuff on the big screen, or you could put on headsets there, and you could And so right now, if you notice this week, the sports now, they're using AR. They're scanning in all the studios, and they're showing the action. So it's like you could look at the field from different views. So AR is already going big time in the sports world for NFL, sports, soccer, everything. And it's going to be probably the first killer app for AR and eventually VR too. Now, the other area too that I think people missed is tinting technology. Several years ago, Apple filed a tinting, and no discussion. I was surprised. And basically, tinting allows AR, VR headsets and glasses. So basically, it shows the Apple patent shows that when you have the tinting off, you just push the off button, you see the AR world, and you can all overlay, right? When you push on buttons, then it becomes included with the VR scene. And you can still have the AR objects both in the VR world or the AR world. In other words, you just separate, just like they did with animation in Disney, right? The overlay. So you could have the overlay. Background could be the real world or the virtual world, and then you just overlay the characters, the Pokemons or whatever you want, 3D objects. So I think watch very carefully, because I think Apple's coming probably roll out some combination. First, probably AR, and then because it's easier, and then VR. But then down the road, I could see that those use their tinting, and then the world changes, because we'll be at AR, VR, mixed reality glasses, and it could happen sooner than most people think. The other area I would is that there's some new holographic technologies coming out, holograms, both on tables. So there's going to be a huge explosion in different hologram projections, both auditorium, room, glasses, whatever you could think. I think that will be a whole industry unto itself over time. And then, of course, Star Wars and others are going to be the first killer apps, right? So there's that. And then finally, I guess one of the things that as we move from industrial and government to commercial, it becomes less institution-centric and toward user-centric or viewer-centric. So the big killer apps are going to be just like the web right now. It's like tools to enable consumers or apps to create anything they want, not the studio things. So I think that's the big trend. But I think everybody made good points. I think we're going to be doing all of the above, because one thing we learned in the internet, Web 1.0 and 2.0, is that millions and millions of developers and billions of users are infinitely more creative than any single company or studio. And so I think it's going to be a roller coaster ride. A lot of startups, a lot of failures, probably 90% failure. But we're going to see things that literally blow us away. And it's coming. And so I'm very happy that you hosted this night. I really congratulate everybody because you provide a lot of insights that I hadn't even thought about. But thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Sharidan Tatsuno. This is excellent debate, excellent debate. I'm from debating community, and how actually our honorable speaker contributing for the debatings, it's actually create a very good impact in academy and in industries. VR, AR is very, very important. Even what the developing nations, they understand that for their education, their entertainment, their industrial developments, everywhere they need this kind of integrations. We need more support from our honorable speakers like Sharidan Tatsuno, David Smith, and all of our speakers, because we need to work hard. We need to work together because we have a lot of challenges. Maybe we can solve this problem together. Beside that, always I share some good news that World Talent Economy Forum next year, February 28, we have very, very famous conference we are launching with some very, very famous scientists from Japan, actually more than 600 scientists. They work with World Talent Economy Forum. And not only this will be not only the conference, we are trying to solve real life problem. And one of the palace, Jhargam Palace, they actually sponsoring World Talent Economy Forum. So only 30 speakers. We can invite them, they can stay with us in this palace. But definitely, those who do not want to travel, you can join in online. Because for the COVID and someone has many restrictions, so definitely we want to respect your present condition. And beside that, yeah, a lot of entertainment. We are engaging with Bollywood. Maybe your connections with the Hollywood will be helpful for us. BBC actually supporting for our media partnership. So hopefully, as a team, we can contribute a lot. And beside that, a few countries' prime minister like Bangladesh, Pakistan, India, Malaysia, we already communicate with them. Many respectable political agencies and political leaders, policymakers, corporation, largest corporations, as well as innovator like you, they will join in our conference. And it will also we are working with Nikola Tesla Technologies museum in Serbia. So it will be real conference and real contribution. I need all of your support, and especially those who are actually those who joined today, everyone our part of our board of advisory. So your support actually help us a lot. And this debate is excellent debate, especially how we getting feedback from the youth. We heavily promote it in the many debating community, Harvard debating community, Cambridge debating communities, and world debating communities. They really like our debate. And how you contributing for us? Hopefully in the futures, we want to see you in the real parliament as a parliament member. That is our visions. Maybe you can play a lot. So thank you, Professor David Smith, Professor Rob, Professor Sharidan Tatsuno, Professor Ching, for your continuous support for World Talent Economy Forum. And dear audience, please share our content as much as possible with your government, with your corporation and academy. Thank you. Bye-bye and take care.
Bye.